Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Barbarian, and you may notice that in this dev diary some things are different. For example, I am on camera. Don't worry about it too much though, I just like that this is sort of a conversation. I talk to you, you talk to me in the comments, and all things considered I said to myself, hey, instead of just being a voice that comes through time and space, let's just be, you know, a talking torso that comes through time and space. I hope that that is okay, there will be nothing blocked out by the camera, it will be quite non-intrusive, but anyway, let's move on to the actual topic, and that is the CK3 dev diary number 33, an offer you cannot refuse. This is a very interesting dev diary because effectively what this is all about is the topic of feudal contracts, and we have already heard about those in dev diary 17, as pointed out by Matthew here. Magnificent, terrific guy. I had the chance to talk to him a bit, you know, on Discord and so on. He's very active actually in the community as a whole. It's very, very interesting to see an inside look when it comes to the design behind CK3. Now let's take a look at what was presented to us in dev diary 17. Let me zoom in right here. In this feudal contract you can see that there are effectively already huge step ups compared to CK2. What we're looking at here is the feudal contract between just two people. So this is between Duchess Matilda, of course, Duchess Matilda of Tuscany, that holds, well, the Duchy of Tuscany, and then of course Kaiser, I assume, Heinrich of the Holy Roman Empire, and there are three stages of the feudal obligation levels. So we have low, normal, and high, and that is interesting, mostly not because of these levels, because these levels are very boring, very bland. Essentially you just have three levels and that is all you can do in this negotiation phase, but mostly because this is between a character and a character. In CK2 and in all the mods that I have seen at the very least, all of these contracts are always realm based. When I, you know, go and make it so that, for example, the burgher have to pay more tax, then that is for everybody that is a burgher inside of my realm. And that has always been a bit odd, seeing as of course these contracts were a highly special and a highly personal relationship between, you know, the actual liege and the vassal. And they've expanded on that in CK2, as I said already. This is a huge step up in comparison to CK2, mostly because it is a direct and personal relationship that these vassal and liege have in this picture, but it was very bland. Now they expanded on this, as Matthew already teases here when, you know, he brings this up. We already talked about this, I want to say a month ago, maybe 1.5 months ago, I can't quite decide when I did those videos, but we saw in the press footage, we saw a lot of these new contract designs and they were very endearing even back then. I know that Matthew said in the Discord that he and some others got together and essentially redesigned it. I'm a huge fan of this, I hope that they keep up that work. Before we jump into the actual dev diary content and what they changed in comparison to what you just saw, let's take a look at Twitter right here. Announcing our 7th Discord live Q&A with the Crusader Kings III devs. Join our Discord. It will happen on the 1st of July, so it would be tomorrow at 11:30 AM CEST. I would ask you all, if you're hearing this, if you're interested in this, to go and check this out, because these Q&As are unique in the gaming scene. You will never see them anywhere else. You know what, let me just retweet this. You will never see a developer as transparent and as open about their design decisions and about the input of the community as Paradox when it comes to CK3. I've never seen this before in game development at any point. Even crowdfunded games have fewer updates. Now, if you have any good questions, and I seriously mean any good questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Let anybody else know. If you are not available at 11:30 AM CEST, then somebody else probably will be, and if they pick up your question, that would make it even better. Now, that being said, let's jump in the actual dev diary. So, the contract has changed quite a bit. You can see it right here. This is an entirely different page. Effectively, we now have these stages, but they're split. What we had right here with feudal obligation level, we now have 5 levels each, and they are separate for taxes and levies. But on top of that, we also have special contracts. We have non, scutage, march, and palatinate. More on that in a second, because it is, you know, I already guessed a bit about this, I guess, when we picked up these screenshots first, but now they explained it properly in this dev diary, so let's get there before we do anything else. And then we have coinage rights, we have succession rights, we have war declaration, we have council rights, and we have title revocation. All of which are much more roleplay heavy than they are anything else. Which I of course really love. I mean, CK3 is a storytelling generator, so for me, you know, the more roleplay opportunities I see and the more roleplay options I see, I think the better it is. I think we can all agree to this. You can see this is a powerful vassal as well. He's a duke based on the silver thing here. You know, if it was bronze, he would be a count. I don't even know what barons get, but I know kings get gold and then emperors get gold with a bit of purple, because that is of course the sign of Roman emperors. So this is a really nice screenshot. Let's move on though to actually see explained what it is all about. Below that we have what we call the fine print options. So of course we, know these are very self-explanatory. I guess this is just, how much money do they give you, how much levies do they give you. But then the fine print options are the cool ones. These fine options are unlocked via various innovations and provide various modifications to the contract. The first row being the special contract options of scutage, march, and palatinate, which are available for vassals that are dukes or kings, so only fairly powerful vassals have any option for these anyway. Scutage contract, you can see right here, while subject to a scutage contract, the vassal will pay 50% more tax than what their feudal taxes obligation dictates, while at the same time providing 70% fewer levies than what their feudal levies obligation dictates, making the liege effectively significantly worse off. You can see here as well, though, that the vassal has an easier time maintaining a higher number of men-at-arms, which is pretty nice because it makes it, more expensive to be a vassal, but it makes it easier to maintain your own army while not giving your liege any armies whatsoever. Then over here we have the march contract, which is practically the opposite. While subject to a march contract, the vassal will receive bonuses to their levies and defensive capabilities, but provide 50% less tax than what their feudal taxes obligation dictates. You can see it right here, army maintenance minus 20%, control territory defender advantage plus 5, levy size, garrison size, and levy reinforcement rate plus 20%. All of these are very, very interesting because effectively it makes you a powerhouse not to be trifled with. It also makes it a bit harder, I think, for your liege to go against you when you have a march contract, seeing as it simply makes you significantly stronger in your own territory. But of course the march is primarily, kind of geared towards the enemy and, enemies that are outside of the realm. That is how they historically have functioned, where march essentially works as a defender. For example, the Ostmark, that was Austria, these days known as Austria, of course, but the Ostmark was created as something that needed to safeguard the core of the empire against, for example, the Magyars, the Czechs, and so on and so forth. And the Magyars they were a force to be reckoned with after their migration to the Carpathian Basin and the Pannonian Basin. And they continued to pillage for essentially about 100 years inside of the core of the empire. But Austria, as by design, was meant to kind of guard against those aggressions from the east. So this is quite interesting because it gives you the opportunity where you make practically no money from them, but where they are very capable of fighting, which possibly could also go against you if things go wrong. I think this is one of the most interesting contracts. I mean, this one is nice and all, but the modifiers aren't that plenty-some. Now down here we have the Palatinate contract, very, very interesting. The liege gets more prestige, and then the vassal gets even more prestige. Fellow vassal opinion plus 15, hostile scheme success chance plus 10, and personal scheme success chance plus 10. I reckon that essentially if you give someone Palatinate, of course, let's just read it here. While subject to a Palatinate contract, the vassal enjoys many privileges within the realm, which increases their standing and gives them more political clout. Palatinate vassals increase their liege's prestige, but provide 20% less tax and levies than what their feudal taxes and feudal levies obligations dictate. This is very interesting to me because you can use this in so many different ways. When I'm just thinking about it, I mean, you could give this to who is supposed to be your heir. You could theoretically say, hey, you know what, my dear heir, you get a Palatinate contract, making it so that you get a lot of prestige, and for example, if we are elective, then people are more likely to vote you in. You could also, if you are not, for example, elective, you could give it to someone that you don't care about if they have prestige, if they are, regarded well by the other vassals, and then you can say, hey, you will never rebel against me because I just made you happy. I made you a very, very happy personality. I think that the Palatinate contract essentially can be used to be a bit of a co-king of a position, I think, where, your heir can be treated as a co-king, but at the same time, it can also mean that you can simply take a vassal that otherwise might plot against you, that otherwise might faction against you. You can take that vassal and you can give him a position within which he will be happy, even if he doesn't actually get to become the top liege. I think this is quite the interesting contract. I think honestly my favorite out of all of these contracts because it gives you so much opportunities to use it in different fashions. Whether, for example, marches will actually be used in border regions where they were historically used, I don't know. It's difficult to say. You might just want to use this, wherever you kind of are separating your realm into scutage, march, etc., etc. But we'll see about this. This is quite interesting. What we haven't talked about yet, of course, are these special individual rights. We have talked about the special contracts. I love these. This is such a huge addition, especially in comparison to what we have previously. I mean, 3 stages, it's again really cool. You have a vassal by vassal contract, but the 3 stages, it's nothing. It is very, very bland. Now, in comparison, though, this is utterly amazing. I love this. Now, let's move on so that we can actually see what is written right here. At the bottom of things, we have the rest of the fine print options available. These are things like guaranteeing a vassal a spot on the council or granting granting them coinage rights, whatever that means. I'll be honest with you, granting anybody coinage rights in the medieval times, that's wild, because putting your own face onto the money, I mean, that means something. Some options are only shown if the vassal meets specific conditions. For example, if the vassal is of a different faith to the liege. In such a case, the religious protection gives them special rights to practice their faith without risk of the liege demanding their conversion or converting the faith of their provinces. That is big. That is huge. Now, why is this so huge? And it doesn't show here. I assume this spot is essentially reserved for religious protection. But this is huge, because religious protection makes it so that you can theoretically exist, for example, as, you know, a Muslim underling of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and you can kind of plot your own way through that kingdom internally without having your titles permanently revoked, because you have a contract that actually works. It encourages multi-religious contracts, but it also encourages mods to work with these. I'm very, very happy about this entire thing, especially the religious protections, making it so that, you know, you can actually have a very diverse sort of setup for your vassals. I love this. Now, let's move to something that I am somewhat skeptical about. I mean somewhat skeptical because I don't actually know what it will look like and where it will go. And that is the negotiation phase. I can see this as a good thing. I can see this as a bad thing, the way it is done. With the new obligations that can be changed and enacted, this allows you to negotiate a more interesting deal. For example, you as the liege may want to increase the amount of taxes your vassal gives you, but just doing that alone will be viewed as unfair by the vassal and increase your tourney. Now, they've experimented a bit with the value, how much you can change, and you can change 3 things in one negotiation stage, and you only have 1 negotiation per vassal life. Meaning, for example, Duke Otto von Nordheim right here, the ruler of Bavaria, what a great person. If he dies, you can negotiate again with his then heir and, you know, heir apparent. You can see right here, this is essentially one thing that changes, gains normal taxes, and this would be an act of tyranny, meaning that you would incur tyranny, but you could still do it. This is important to me, you could still do this. So if you don't want to take the tyranny hit, then you need to look at what changes you can propose that the vassal will want. So in exchange for these increased taxes, you could guarantee your vassal a spot on the council, meaning you can now enact this deal without being viewed as a tyrant. So let's take a look at this right here. Council rights guaranteed. And in regards to that, you gain the normal taxes now from the low taxes, and nobody is unhappy. You can still see Duke Otto's opinion goes up if this contract is enacted as a total, essentially, because, you know, he is still benefiting from low feudal levies, for example. You can see right here, if you just have this contract, even then, Duke Otto II's opinion of you generally goes up because it is a +5, because you still have the feudal levies in low and not normal. If all of these are normal, essentially, it's a 0, then -5 plus -10. That's how I interpret this anyway. So with this being said, essentially nothing changes here, and this means you don't gain any tyranny. Now, I want to point out, gaining tyranny is not necessarily all that awful, because it just means people are a bit, you know, eager to go against you, I guess, but they aren't outright declaring war against you. Alternatively, if you have a hook on your vassal, then you can use that hook to count as 1 free change in favor of the vassal. So you can use your hook and get those higher taxes without having to give any other concessions and not be viewed as a tyrant. Blackmailing people is surprisingly effective. So we're not giving him any council rights here. We're just saying, hey, I have a hook on you because, you know, for example, I know that you may have had intercourse with a donkey, whatever, you know, maybe that's just a rumor, but you never know what's going on in Bavaria. And essentially, we're looking at a situation here where you can push something through without incurring tyranny because the vassal says, yeah, he's not a tyrant. I swear, guys, don't do anything against him. I like this principle. And I think it's good that you sit down and you say, as the liege, I can change this contract and I don't have to go like into, you know, laborious long-term negotiations with this contract. The vassal, technically speaking, does not get a say in this when the liege changes a law. And I think this could be problematic. I'm not entirely certain about this. So the way I feel about this is we could come into a situation where the AI is too eager or not eager enough to constantly change contracts whenever an opportunity pops up. So let's say you die and immediately the AI says, hey, I negotiated a contract with your father and now you're in control. So here's instantaneously a new contract. I think that could be problematic. And then the other way would be if the AI is not eager enough, the AI could essentially say, hey, you know what, I don't feel that eager, and let me just get rid of this damn hair here. I haven't been to the barber since the entire lockdown stuff started, but usually I don't have hair this long, but don't worry about it. Effectively, my worry is that they're either too eager or not eager enough to change the law, seeing as you as the vassal don't have an impact directly in what your liege wants to change. So what I was hoping for is effectively that, you know, if, for example, my liege says, hey, I want this, I want to offer you, or not rather, I want to modify your thing, even if it incurs me tyranny, I want to offer this contract. And then they would send that to us, and we could say, yes, because obviously I just have to accept it, or I could say, and then the tourney would occur, or I could say, hey, what about I offer you something else? And you could send back a different offer, and then they could either reject it or take it. If they reject it, whatever contract they sent to you is now enacted. And if they take it, then the contract that they originally sent to you isn't enacted. So I don't have anything inherently against the idea of the liege doing whatever they want. It's a liege contract. If it's a tourney thing, then you join a faction. That is your way to reacting to it. You don't have no way to reacting to it. But I would have liked it if they sent me, for example, this tourney contract, and then I could counteroffer with this. And if they don't like this, then they just say no and go through with the original contract that they offered for me. Sadly, that's not at all the case. Whatever you modify here, you modify. That's just a fact of life. Your vassal is simply told that you did this change, and that is all you do. And look at this freaking hair there. Okay, so that is essentially something that I would have liked to see here. We're not having it here. I don't know whether this is even a possibility, whether we're ever going to see this. I would love it. I think that would be a great thing, but even the way it is right now, of course, is quite something. The vassal themselves can, of course, and this is the other thing, which is why I'm not too peeved about this counteroffer thing not being in, can of course also negotiate the contract. They have added the added restriction that they must offer the liege an even trade. So they cannot ask to pay lower taxes without using either a hook or agreeing to give the liege something they would want, be that giving more levies, agreeing to stay with only petition succession, or giving up a benefit they have previously been given, such as that guaranteed council spot. So at the end of the day, you can do a counter offer by immediately, you know, changing something as long as you have a hook or as long as you're willing to give something to your liege. I think that's okay. It's not quite the counter offer idea that I have. I don't know how hard that would be to implement. I don't know how hard it is to balance. The way I see it, with the AI being either too eager or not eager enough, there might be a lot of hassle involved in this that would be troublesome for the player and for, you know, AI realms in general. But we'll see how this actually goes in action. This template as a whole is amazing. I could just see the counter-offer stuff going in and making it even better. But, you know, I don't know. At the end of the day, it just makes hooks more valuable, especially from a vassal point of view. And I think that is huge. I really like the idea of hooks being great. If you're a liege and you have a lot of stuff going against you, for example, you're a murderer, you murdered your way to the top, then it makes a lot of sense that your vassals might be able to say, hey, I'll forget about the murder you committed there if I get better conditions for my contract. And in that case, you just say, all right, you know, let's just have peace in the realm. And otherwise, you, of course, can incur some tyranny and suppress them. Some vassals start with contracts different to the default. In the Holy Roman Empire, all vassals start with low taxes and levies to represent the internal state and the lower amount of control the emperor was exerting over their vassals at the time. I think this is a really good choice. I think this is really neat because it mostly makes it so that the Holy Roman Empire hopefully won't blob out as much as they could. What I just really hope for again is that the AI isn't too eager or not eager enough in terms of pursuing contract changes. You know, if they're busy, for example, in Italy, then they are unlikely to harshen the conditions of a vassal up in Hamburg. But we'll see about that. Now, when it comes to modding contracts, and this is again a very, very exciting part, you can see it is all very, very freestyle. You can include whatever you want. You can, you know, do AI vassal desire. This one here are the religious rights. You can see how much the vassal wants it and how much the liege wants it. You can see it right here as well. Vassal opinion that isn't incurred, or rather that is given if you have religious right protections. And then you can see right here the AI vassal desire to get the protection is always 10, meaning that they will always attempt to pursue it. Here we have the scripts database entry for the religious protection obligation type. It demonstrates the various options and should be fairly self-explanatory in its naming of the options. I am very excited to see what modders can do with this. This is a really good, great, amazing base thing, honestly. Like, this already was good as a base thing because it was character to character, not realm-wide. But this right here is amazing. I can only hope that this will be expanded upon. It has already been confirmed in the Discord that, for example, being a Palatinate form of contract won't change your title, which would have been cool. So, you know, just a roleplay aspect that you gain a different title, but that's okay. I think all of these are really, really cool suggestions. All of these are really cool principles. And again, please do join the CK Discord server if you haven't already, so that you can partake in the Q&A. And then what we have down here are the pets of the developers. So let's just kind of scroll through these as I take a look at how we do this. Look at this stuff. Cute animals that you can all pet. This is not an animal. This is a succulent that you can all, of course, take a look at, and that hopefully we will be able to pet in CK3 itself to lose some stress. I also really like the idea, by the way. They didn't really elaborate on this because this didn't change, but this is nice. 35 stress because you are generous. I think that's a cool thing. But with that, we come to the end of this dev diary, and with that, I will tell you that I want to thank the members of the channel that are making videos such as this one possible, namely the Barons, Aaron, Stefan, and let me just actually restart here. Stefan, The Pelted, Achilles, Know-How, Charlie, Eterna, Falling Phoenix, Rex Romanorum, Jacob, The Musialago, Dan, Florian, MFA, Mitchell, Aaron, Stefan, and Snywolf. Even after all this time, after the new order, I'm still stuck in the old one. And then of course also the counts, Lachlan, Kazen, Wombit, Thomas, and Shifty, and last but not least, the absolutely beautiful Dukes, Eric, Kiriana, Goodfield, Nathan, Jack, Kenneth, and Lex. So thank you all for supporting the channel. If you also want to support the channel, then check out the join button right underneath the video. Let me know what you think about the revamped vassal contracts. I love them. I think they could be even better, but they are already much more amazing than they were when they were presented to us the first time around. Thank you all for tuning in, and later, alligator.